Hello and welcome to North 100, a Canadian Highlander podcast. I'm Serge. Joining me, I have a Jer.
Hello.
An Alex.
Neat Peng and Newom.
And a Ben.
Honk.
A reminder, the North 100 is brought to you by you with your support of the Patreon over at patreon.com/loadingreadyrun. Let's start it off with the same way we open every episode, with the best card that you're not playing. Up today, I have Jer. Jer, tell me your secrets.
Usually mythics aren't very secret, but I haven't seen many people playing this one. Dovin Bond, a planeswalker for 2 white blue, comes in with 3 loyalty, has a +1 until your next turn. Up to 1 target creature gets -3/-0, and its activated abilities can't be activated. Noticeably, it does disable mana abilities. -1, you gain 2 life and draw a card. And -7, you get an emblem with your opponents can't untap more than 2 permanents during their untap step, so it's like a one-sided static orb.
Where are you playing this?
I'm playing it in control. The +1 is really good at forcing your opponents to overextend into your wrath effects. The -1 is really, really great at stabilizing you, especially against red decks and decks that are trying to finish you off with burn spells. Like, once you've cleared their last few things, you have counters up, and you just need to make sure you don't die to, like, burn spell off the top. I don't actually recommend embleming it this very often.
Really?
I'm 0-1 in games where I have emblemed this card.
That's a lot of sample data. I mean...
But I think you should probably just minus a bunch. It's probably more likely to win you the game.
If you ever get up there. Interesting. Now, 3-mana Dovin's pretty real. But nobody likes 4-mana Dovin, eh?
I think the 3-mana one's a lot more situational, where they just go in different decks, really.
Okay.
Like, this one just seems really good.
Yeah, I think it's a little underrated. I think it compares very reasonably to Jace Architect of Thought, which has also been seeing less play recently. But I actually like this one better than Jace Architect of Thought for blue-eye control specifically.
All right, well, let's move into today's theme. Today, we begin part 1 of X of our Throne of Eldraine set review. So a reminder about our set reviews. They are Highlander-focused. They are not exhaustive, so we do not go over every card. Mostly the cards that we think are either going to have an impact on the format or that we think you at home are going to want us to talk about. And again, reminder from that, if you have any questions, if you think we missed a card, let us know down in the comments and we'll try and get it on the next episode. Now, let's talk about not a specific card, but a series of cards. Let's talk about Knights. Let's kind of group them all together. Throne of Eldraine has added a lot of Knights to this set. Too many to go over them individually. A lot of them have synergy bonuses. I'll ask the question to the room, are Knights viable as a tribe in Highlander?
I think if you're...
I'm sorry, I used the viable word. Good... Playable, like, obviously there's enough cards. Is there enough cards to make a deck?
Yes.
You can make a Knight deck, bring it to your local event, not have an embarrassing performance with the deck. I feel as though...
Solid 2-2, maybe 3-1 sort of deck? Not even 2-2, eh?
No. It's like... Vampires is a deck we've talked about before.
Yeah.
It's been kind of a fan favorite that may or may not have a couple of local victories in Victoria tournaments. We just don't have that information saved. We may have that information saved, but please don't go looking for it. And I think Knights just offers a very similar experience and color spread, but with more flexibility and higher card quality.
So, white...
Yep.
Mardu?
What are your...
White, black with maybe a little sprinkle.
Mardu is like what Eldraine really pushed. But if you look over... Before Eldraine was even started showing cards in the preview season, I was like, okay, well, maybe we'll look at, what Knights are playable. Before Eldraine, you could get up to like 44 Knight creatures that... Well, not 44 Knights. You'd have mana dorks in there to accelerate your Knights. But like you could get up to 44 creatures and be like, this is reasonable. Like your card quality isn't super low. You are playing some Knights, white Knights, protection Knights, but like they're not bad.
A lot of color protection in this tribe.
Yeah.
A lot of first strike. I think it
of first
I think
strike.
it pairs up well in the creature matchup, but is it fast enough to beat sort of the giants of the format, right?
Probably not, but that's a recurring weakness to tribal decks in general, is that like goblins can beat everything because it vroom zooms. Merfolk has had some time in the sunshine because of blue, and then where's the rest?
How many hate cards are incidentally knights?
Notably, Thalia is not a knight.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah. Can we bring up Thalia, please?
Thalia's a zombie, right?
I know she isn't.
Well, I guess
Getting
she got
eaten by the
Gitrog
Gitrog monster.
Yeah, human soldier. Yeah, notably not a knight. I mean, I'm sure Thalia could be an honorary knight. You probably play her in the knight deck.
That's whack.
I gotta imagine if you're building knights, you're building it about like, you will struggle to kill my creatures, and my creatures will get bigger, or they'll find more creatures.
Yeah.
Instead of preventing your opponent from playing spells, your opponent's spells are just worse because your cards all have protection from this or lifelink or first strike or whatnot.
Or they all have indestructible.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
So in conclusion, give it a try. I mean, there's enough now to really make it worth it. And obviously, if you're excited about Throne of Eldraine and you're like, now is my time to shine as a knight, polish your suit of armor and get down to your LGS and rumble.
Our data says maybe.
All right, let's jump into the first card we're going to talk about today, the Archon of Absolution. Archon of Absolution is a 4-mana 3/2 Archon, has flying, protection from white, and creatures can't attack you or a planeswalker you control unless their controller pays 1 for each of those creatures, so the propaganda effect.
Woof.
Jer.
I don't think this is going to be an all-star or anything, but I just wanted to touch on it, as it's got a lot of really relevant text, and if there are a bunch of white creature decks in your meta and you're playing a prison-y type or even a mid-range or controlling, likely non-blue controlling type strategy with white, this is a reasonable addition that can be tricky for those decks to deal with.
Yeah, like this card beats the Knights deck.
Yes. Yes, it does.
All right, next up, Charming Prince, aka Wheeler. With 2-mana 2/2 human noble for 1 and a white. When it enters the battlefield, you may scry 2 or gain 3 life, or exile another target creature you own, return to the battlefield under your control step at the beginning of the next end step. Jer, what do you think?
This is a Bant Blink card if I've ever seen one. Yeah, what Alex said. Yeah, it does everything. It's very blinkable. It blinks things. It has the nice Flicker Wisp text that returns it to the returns at end step, so you can, if you have a way to flash this in, you can save a thing from a Wrath, or you can flicker your Flicker Wisp to flicker one of their things out for their whole turn.
Can I just say Scry is a weird mechanic to have on a white card?
Yeah.
Yeah, it
no
is
kidding.
a little weird, but very nice. Often in the late game, when you draw a 2-drop, or you draw a blink spell, you're like, oh crap. You just want to draw relevant spells, so having the ability to filter and...
Does this card do enough to go into any other deck? Obviously, in the ETB Blink style deck where you're recurring that ability, it's fine. But a 2-mana 2/2, do any of the low-to-the-ground aggressive white decks want this because of the flexibility it offers?
Like, it's a human. I could try this guy. I don't know if I'm going to be, like, super stoked on it.
If you're really hurting for things to play, and once again, there's a bunch of aggressive stuff in your meta, having this...
Yeah,
as a card that's good against the red decks and reasonable in other spots isn't like it's nobody's ever gonna like be like, oh my god, you put this in your deck just because it has so much flexibility and it's a reasonable rate.
Yeah,
but there are often things.
I think as Jerry says, if there's like red decks or aggressive decks, or like maybe if your human deck has a lot of enters play effects that you want to run back, like this seems pretty good with what's the green white creature that brings stuff back from your yard.
Renegade
That's
Rally.
the one.
Thalia's Lieutenant.
Oh, it triggers itself too.
Do you like this in, I'm throw this out hypothetically, D&T to try and get more value off of your stone forges or anything like that?
I don't think you need it.
No.
Okay.
Like,
I think D&T already has like a very good creature matchup generally. That's why you're playing the deck.
It also doesn't have a hate mode, so
Death and Taxes is like so filled to the brim with the top tier cards of all time that like you'll receive these 2-drops and 3-drops that are going to be like 8.5s out of 10, or if you had some really weird scale like an 8.8, and then the 2-drop slot, there's like a bouncer over there that's like, sorry, 9.1s are higher only.
You know, the deck's just like, oh, no, I can't.
You must be at least
possibly
this good to get on the ride.
This card isn't quite Brightling.
Okay.
Like, woof.
All right, let's move on to Giant Killer. 1 mana, 1/2 human peasant with an activated ability, 1 and a white, tap target creature. But it also has an adventure mode, 3 mana instant for 2 and a white, destroy target creature with power 4 or greater. Wheeler, what do you think?
So I'm going to get this out early. I may overvalue a lot of adventure cards, or at least maybe overvalue is just assuming that I'm going to be wrong. But adventure is a ridiculously powerful ability.
Yep.
It's incredibly flexible, and when you have both sides of the coin being relevant to our format, as well as easy to cast or like to find use for it, it's probably going to get talked about. And I have a personal affection towards tappers. So the 1 mana tappers specifically, Gideon's Lawkeeper and what's Gold Meadow
Harrier.
Is it Harrier?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know why I know that.
Nice.
I just call it the Kithkin.
All right.
And they're just 1 mana, 1/1 creatures that tap other creatures for 1 mana, which can, again, invalidate these massive mid-range creatures your opponent may play, big dumb dragons,
Like,
whatever it may be.
Martledge can't get past this.
Yeah.
Just putting that out there.
The peasant is stopping my 2020.
And I've really enjoyed those cards have fallen off as white weenie kind of builds have started to become a minority when how you approach your Isamaru into Thalia into whatever curve. But I have found they still find some success, and personally I found some success with like a blisteringly fast version of this deck that does play the tappers. And having that flexibility to be, late game if you're a deck with 25 lands maybe, and you find yourself like, okay, I've hit 3 lands, that's a lot. Oh, I drew this card. Well, I guess I'm going to kill the thing for the max value and then play a little dude out later. That seems pretty good to me.
Little dude.
Also, it's a peasant.
I'm just worried about the tap ability costing 2 and that being pretty prohibitive.
Yeah, the 2 mana can be a bit when you're like, if you're looking at early game for sure, but I think having the 2 toughness means that you can at least negate some creatures coming in, being like the Goblin Pikers, Savannah Lions, or weird little chip damage, and then getting the most out of this ability is when the creatures are bigger. So you're not trading up as much from like a 1 mana activation on a 3 mana creature, but it's still enough that I think you can justify including this card.
Next up, we have Glass Casket, 2 mana artifact for 1 and a white. When it enters the battlefield, exile target creature an opponent controls with CMC 3 or less until Glass Casket leaves the battlefield.
Hey, wait a minute. This is just Journey to Nowhere.
Now,
No.
it's interesting. There's some differences. Journey to Nowhere, of course, has no restriction. It just says exile a creature. This has a restriction of 3 or less.
You're absolutely right. It's silk wrap.
This is an artifact versus an enchantment, and I included this card, and the reason I included it is specifically because it is an artifact. I think there's some interesting lines in sort of your War of Invention decks, where suddenly you have a tutorable removal spell, where, let's say, there's a Collector Oof in play. There's something in play that's shutting down a large part of your deck, and you need an answer to go find it this way. Sorry. No, I'm getting stone silence from Jaron Wheeler here.
Definitely.
I haven't blown your mind with this line.
I definitely saw this card, and that was the first thing that came to mind, as that was it was a big talking point about this card, maybe seeing like niche play in the Wurza decks in Modern, because it deals with Collector Oof.
Right.
And it's tutorable. But like the overall power level of the artifact decks, and even the like utility ones, is just so much higher than including a card like this, that I think the narrowness of it might cause it to just sit on the sidelines.
Yeah, and like those decks often have access to so much mana that like you could play like Spine of Ishsaw instead of this, and most of the time you just like laugh and you're like, oh sure, of course the 7 mana card is better than the 2 mana card. But in those decks, like the mana is like almost arbitrary. Like you're gonna have it, especially if they're spending their their turn 2 playing hate cards.
It's like the way that I've approached dealing with Collector Oof is either don't even play the decks, or you just pivot to killing them with like attacking with Golos, making a bunch of tokens off Saheeli. Alting Tezzeret. I have alted Tezzeret the Seeker more times in the past, like 6 months.
Old school Magic. It's like we're back 10 years ago.
It's hilarious. You'll just play it down. You're like, all right, attack me. And they're like, I can. And you're like, okay, well, then I'll attack you.
All right. Well, I guess, all right. I thought Glass Casket might have been this silver bullet that we were sleeping on.
It could pop in. Like, it's not, it's like, you're not
Our
going
format's
to
too
not
powerful. I get it.
Oh my god, sir.
It's not a bad thing to have.
Next up, we have Hushbringer. 2 mana 1/2 for 1 and a white. It's a fairy, has flying and lifelink, and creatures entering the battlefield or dying don't cause abilities to trigger. Alex wants to jump in on this one.
No, I'm just being cheeky.
Ben.
This art makes me really uncomfortable.
This ability makes me really uncomfortable.
I just realized that all the red dots, like a hula hoop, are also little mouths.
Smooches?
Yeah.
Oh, heck! No.
I thought those were just red dots at
So-
first, but now that it's larger.
I hate it.
I don't think this card actually does enough.
Oh, good.
It does a lot. Like that line of text of Hushwing Griffing and RIP, like Protean Hulks and whatnot, that is a lot.
Well, I think it's often going to be the case where it either like is winning you the game by itself or doing stone nothing.
Right, which goes back to our discussion with DNT being like, hey, oh, I got a little Hushbringer flying around. Being, hey,
I heard you talking shit.
you are only an 87 out of 100.
Sure.
We really need you to be a bit more, because like this body is miserable. Like it's just it's a
If it was
stupid.
a 2/1,
It's basically
holy
Hoverman.
cow, sign me up.
Yeah, if
But
this had 2 power, that's a race.
if it was a
right there.
2/1, yeah.
Well, I'm happy that
Then
people
it's a 97.
Yeah.
people won't play this, considering how much I like Aristocrats.
Do I have a thing for you? People will most assuredly play this, and we're
don't,
going to
don't.
lose to it, and then they're going to lose the rest of their matches when they draw this card in matches where it's not relevant and it doesn't have enough pressure.
The amount of times I've lost online to like people just slamming turn 2 Torpor Orb when I'm playing Blink, and I'm like, but why? And now it's just going to be this instead.
All right.
All right, let's move on to another creature that might have some niche application here. Linden, the Steadfast Queen.
My queen.
3 mana 3/3 for white. A legendary human noble, has Vigilante, and whenever a white creature you control attacks, gain a life. Alex, what do you think about this card? You've played Soul Sisters and life gain style decks.
Seems like a shoe-in for that deck. I mean, it's a reasonable body. It's got a keyword. You're pretty heavy on white in that deck. And it does what the deck wants to.
And notably, you get an instance of life gain per creature that attacks. So if you attack with 5 creatures,
that's a big
you get
Johnny's
gain
Sprite.
1, gain 1, gain 1, gain 1.
It's also
gain
like
1.
it's relevant as soon as it comes down, assuming you have at least one other creature, which, you know, it's not quite an enters play ability, but yeah, you get. Do each of the triggers happen separately?
Yep. Yep.
Your line is going to get pretty big. Your Johnny's Pride Mate.
Johnny's Pride Mate loves this card.
Yep.
Loves it.
Any other deck like this style of effect?
I mean, like, White Weenie in a aggressive meta wouldn't hate this card. I don't think it's.
I still just think they have better options,
like,
and White Weenie is already pretty favored in the red matchup. So I don't think
it's
they
like,
need to.
What would I be cutting to include this in like a white aggressive deck? Probably, well, obviously another 3 or another 2. But
Thalia.
Nope.
Get
And it's
King
hard.
Kitty.
It's actually hard to cast.
Yeah.
Like both DNT and White Weenie, like having colorless utility lands. It's one of the
Beautiful.
draws, and 3 triple white is actually hard to cast in that deck.
All right, well, let's move on then to the Realm Cloaked Giant. 7 mana 7/7 mythic for 5 white, has Vigilance, but there's also an adventure mode, Cast Off, which is a 5 mana Wrath for 3 white, destroy all non-giant creatures. Jer.
All right. I'm not quite as high on the adventure cards as Ben, but I really like this card, and oh boy, am I going to lose to some Primeval Titans putting this into my deck. But it's also going to win me a bunch of games, so, you know, trade-offs.
right. It's a giant.
This is one of these cards that comes out and all of a sudden you're like, I need to know all of the giants in the format, right? Because bizarrely, the Titans are in fact not Titans. They're giants, inexplicably.
They might be giants.
Get out!
Nope.
Any other thoughts on this card?
You know what? This isn't necessarily related to the card, but we've had cast out, cast down, cast off, all so close to each other.
Yeah.
I've already been getting the first two mixed up, and now I know this is a big giant, and I'm probably just going to call it Wrath Giant. But somebody's going to be like, why didn't you use cast off here? And I'll be like, what do you mean? I don't have cast off in my deck.
I'm not black.
Yeah, I'm not black. They're like, no, that's cast out. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then someone goes, no, that's cast down. And
I pity you,
yeah,
you
well,
poor thing.
Thank you.
Next up, Shepherd of the Flock. Hold.
Wait for it.
Shepherd of the Flock is a 2-mana 3/1 human priest for 1 and a white. Has no abilities, but it also can go on an adventure. For a single white, usher to safety. Return target permanent you control to its owner's hand. Alex, what do you think of this peasant?
This is easily the best. Was it the
3/1 for 2. It's not a piker.
Blade of the Six Pride.
That's the one. Was that the first 3/1 for 1 and a white that they printed?
I believe so.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
There's so many of them now.
There's a lot, like enough that, I mean, I hesitate to say that that would be a deck, but
We should talk about Boros later.
yeah, we probably should. Target permanent blinking this and like saving it is pretty cool, and then like you have a creature with big teeth.
Resets Academy. Useless 3/1 resets Academy.
No, we make it legendary and we reset our Caracas.
Holy moly. Yeah, I'm not positive what exact deck this goes into, but it's interesting enough that I would consider putting it in something.
That's a fun evaluation. And finally, the last card we're going to talk about in white today, the Venerable Knight. 1 mana 2/1 human knight for a
You
single
can just
white.
stop talking.
All right.
Like, we're
Moving
done.
on to blue.
It can put a counter on Thalia.
There's more text. When it dies, put a +1/+1 counter on target knight you control. We went over this, Wheeler. Thalia is not a knight.
She's a zombie.
She's a soldier.
You guys are awful.
Yeah.
It's a human, it's a knight, it's a 2/1 for white. I didn't even try to rhyme that.
Hey.
Wow.
There are other knights in, like, aggressive. I wouldn't play this in D&T because D&T is slowly shedding away all the knights. Well, not the knight.
The one drop.
It's
All the one
slowly
drop.
shedding away the purely aggressive cards.
Yeah.
That aren't like Brimez bonkers. But like for the aggressive, the hyper aggressive white decks, or even white black, honestly, there's a lot of really cheap knights in those decks that you're just going to include, and you won't know it's a knight until like Magic Online's going to tell you to target it, and you're like, oh.
Now here's a question.
I see.
Have we finally removed Savannah Line? Are all the better Savannah lines so plentiful that you no longer play Savannah lines other than like OG style
I
points?
will always play.
All right, Wheeler aside.
I cut it a while ago.
From what? D&T?
White Weenie.
From aggressive white.
Yeah.
White Weenie, you never cut any 2 mana.
Are we
two power,
getting to the
two
point
power, 1 drop.
where Immortal Servitude is starting to get good in this deck?
No.
Okay.
All right, let's
Just
move.
checking.
Let's move on to blue. Our
popping
first blue card we're going to talk about today is the Brazen Borrower. 3 mana 3/1 for a 1 and a blue and a blue. It's a fairy rogue, has flash, flying, and may only block creatures with flying, relevant. But it also has an adventure mode for 1 and a blue. You may return target non-land permanent an opponent controls to its owner's hand. Wheeler.
God, if there was any card to just give people a crash course on how to play tempo, it is this card. This card is so, like, you look at it and you're like, oh, okay. I mean, yeah, flash 3 powers, pretty good. But, like, oh, God, the tempo player in me is like, okay, so you like the...
It's even card advantage.
Yeah, it just like the most basic line, if you want to play this as soon as possible, is on 2, you bounce whatever it is they deployed to the field, and then you untap with 3 mana and you pass. Now, you have open mana to either deploy this as a threat. If they play, say, a Planeswalker and you got no pressure, they play something that doesn't matter, they use their turn casting like a draw spell or whatnot, Or you just hold up blue mana, which is terrifying for a lot of decks, or a combination of other mana.
This improves your spell stutter sprite, and you can pitch it to Force of Will.
And Force of Negation and Misdirection.
Yes.
Card's good.
Obviously very good in tempo. Do we think it'll see play in broader blue decks?
I would play this in mid-range as well.
I think you'd play this in control. One of the big, like, it was brought up by people that have been like the control decks or the like weird blue landsy decks that have been popping up, the 4-color lands decks.
I mean, as the premier lands pilot, I know what you're talking about. Keep
yes,
going.
of course. As the premier lands pilot, of course, you would know what you're talking. Anyways, just having like the amount of times you'll play a Nimble Obstructionist as just a 3-mana, 3-power flash flying creature, very high.
Yeah,
that just kills people dead.
There are some interesting restrictions on this card.
I think the fact that this can't block very well means you're not likely going to include it in control very often, because the other effect also isn't really what you're looking for in control. Just like you're not really looking to just like temporarily deal with problems. You want to more looking for permanent solutions in that archetype. But
let's move on to Corridor Monitor. This is a 2-mana 1/4 for 1 and a blue. Has fantastic art, is a construct. When it enters the battlefield, untap target artifact or creature you control. Let's just get Time Vault right out of the way right now. What are we playing this in that isn't also just Time Vault?
Pod.
Yeah, wait, this untaps Time Vault and also Kiki Jiki.
And Birthing Pod. And Vanifar. It's just a 2-drop in your pod chain that we haven't really had a good one other than like Phantasmal Imaging, one of your 3-drops. And so like just lets you go if you have pod and a buttload of mana and like a 1-drop. There you go.
This
Kill
stupid
them.
thing has 4 toughness.
That's huge.
Why does it have 4 toughness?
And baby, when you get Workshop, Pod, Time Vault all together, perfect inclusion. I wouldn't include it in anything else though. But, you know, untapping, I wouldn't even untap pod, or not pod. I wouldn't untap Time Vault with this. It's a one shot. And I just don't think that's where you want to be, especially with like Manifold Key.
Unless you're on a pod.
Pod Vault.
Pod Vault.
That well-known Victoria archetype, Pod Vault.
Multiple people have played it.
Yeah, this is great. Just pod up from this.
Yeah, because all your Kiki Jiki pieces untap your vault.
Yeah. It's also 1 power. Pretty relevant for like Revel Arc, for one of the recruiters, Imperial Recruiter.
Yeah.
For just making all your X1s terrible.
Yeah, 4 toughness is the biggest thing.
All right.
Oh dear, my 3-1 seems to have encountered a roadblock.
Let's talk about, I'm going to just no-scope this and say the card that Ben Wheeler is most excited about in the entire format, in the entire set, pardon me.
Island.
Emry, Lurker of the Loch.
My queen.
Yeah, there we go. Wait, how many queens do you have in this?
I got plenty.
Okay. 3-mana, 1/2 legendary Merfolk Wizard, but this spell costs 1 generic mana less for each artifact you control. When it enters the battlefield, put the top 4 cards of your library into your graveyard, and tap, choose target artifact card in a graveyard. You may cast that card this turn. Wheeler.
For the record, I don't think this is the best card in the set.
Nor
do I. Yes, exactly. It's just that. I think there's enough application for these abilities where you can go infinite with it.
Yeah.
Take advantage of stocking up your graveyard, and even just utility killing people.
Can you give me an example line of how you go infinite with Emry?
So you take a Black Lotus, or a Lion's Eye Diamond,
Okay.
or a Lotus Petal. You take a Paradox Engine, and you take an Emry. Great. That's the easiest one, because you just play, you have this Paradox, right? You got one of your 0s in the bin, you Emry to cast it, you cast it, untaps Emry, sack it, add mana, yada, yada, yada.
And then cast a spell, untaps to the Paradox Academy, tap, bring it back.
Yep. And then there's some other things that can get a little out of hand with Rings of Bright Hearth involved, and you use like Codex Shredder because Shredder can put itself in the bin. And
so is this now, I don't like to use the word auto-include, but do you think we're going to start seeing this in a lot of Paradox Academy decks? Is this going to be an eggs card? Like what obviously there's some application there. What decks want Emry?
I think you'll see a lot of it in the first 6 months in Paradox decks, maybe eggs, and the Welder decks. So like if you're playing like a Goblin Weldery kind of deck, which is something I believe is wildly unexplored in our format right now, especially after doubling up and Urza and all that jazz. After the initial new toy syndrome, you'll probably still see her pop up, most certainly if these welder decks turn out to be, pretty good and prevalent. And then maybe in Paradox still, more like a niche kind of card too, right?
This is a question I'm kind of directing to myself, but everyone else. What do you think of Emery in Workshop Weenie? Do you think it does enough? 1 mana, 1/2 with the ability to recur some threats from your graveyard?
Nope.
Cost colored mana.
Doesn't attack.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, this watery tart's gonna lob a scimitar at you, but
I mean, I've enjoyed Goblin Welder in Workshop Weenie. I thought that card's offered a lot of flexibility, but the abilities are very different, obviously.
Yes.
Especially because Goblin Welder can work against your opponent's threats. All right, moving on, we have the Fairy Vandal.
oh, you broke it.
2 mana, 1/2 Fairy Rogue for 1 and a blue. Has flash and flying, and whenever you draw your second card each turn, put a +1/+1 counter on the fairy. One more time to Wheeler.
This guy, the art kind of looks like an anime character just beat a level in a game. He's like, ha ha! Card's great for like tempo. I'm going to try it in Sorensen. I don't know if that's the home in which it'll see the most play in, but it's got flying, it's got flash, it has a clause that a lot of decks are already going to try to achieve. You only really need to get it up once for it to really meet what you're looking to do. For sure, I'm going to play this in Flying Men. Again, it's a flash threat. It does go against my rule of its power needing to be equal to or greater than the mana cost. Yeah. But Flying Men plays so many dirt tier cantrips, like literally all of them. Except for, no, I think I'm on Portent too. But you play all the bad ones.
Are you playing Sorceress Sight?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, boy.
And yeah, also being a fairy, we've gotten to the point, like that deck was already playing Spellstutter Sprite. And now we can reliably have enough fairies
to counter a 1-drop.
To counter a 2-drop.
Is there a fairies deck?
I lost to it in a finals like 3 years ago.
Fairies was like the
and
original
then beat it in a
vampires.
finals the week after.
Fairies was the original vampires. Wow. Any other application we can think of for this card? It seems... What about like red, blue?
It's also good in like, I think actual flash archetypes are getting better and are getting closer, like Bant Flash or Rug Flash are getting a close enough density that you don't have to play 5-color flash and pray to the mana gods that you cast spells each game, which makes the deck more real. So I think both of those decks are getting close, and it's obviously not auto include in those.
Next up, we have Gatwick the Wizened. How do I describe this one? For X, blue, you get a legendary human wizard 3/3. Now, when it enters the battlefield, draw X cards. And whenever you cast a blue spell, tap target non-land permanent an opponent controls. And just before people get down into the comments about how does the game remember the value of X when a creature comes into play, because X is only a number on the stack, and don't even worry about it, it just works. Jer, what do you think about this card?
I don't actually think it's that good, but it's really sweet, and I love it.
Let me just give you a jingle. Ba-doop-doop-doo. Whoop.
I actually don't think so. It's a sorcery. It doesn't have flash.
It's a wizard.
You have better ways to draw cards.
But it's a wizard.
It's a wizard, and it's got trips blue, and it's mana cost.
You can Riptide Laboratory it.
That's basically
and
a
draw more
facet.
cards.
I actually, you don't think this card's fine in like the mono blue devotion-y deck, or
you
like
could play it in Devotion. Just Alex was doing the Seinfeld riff, and
yeah,
it's not for that one.
What value does X have to be? Is this a deck where you want X to be 5? Are you happy casting this as a 4-mana 3/3 that draws a card when it enters the battlefield and it just gives you some static ability?
I've got a number, but I want to know what you think X is going. Like what the
so
floor
here's what
for
we're gonna do.
X
Here's
to
what we're
be.
gonna do. You're gonna put a number of fingers under your hand, and then you're gonna bring it up
for what?
What you think the minimum value X has to be in order to make this card worth it.
3, 2, 1. It's 0.
Yeah.
It's just 0.
Oh, we all guessed 0.
Yeah, in the deck we're describing, just like the aggressive blue Devotion deck, just having a thing where every time you cast a spell, you get to tap down your opponent's creatures is insane. especially considering you're blue, a bunch of your things have flash, so you get to like make their best thing not attack and not block. Then you get to untap, cast your creatures pre-combat. All their things can't block. You kill them.
Do you think the X...
Gatwick's your uncle.
The X is a trap on this card, that it's wanting people to think you have to cast it for more and holding it back longer than you'll want to have it in play?
Possibly. I'm sure people will misplay it because they're like, oh, gotta get value.
It seems like a sweet top deck.
But yeah, it's also like just gravy, right? Like we all put up 0, so we all understand that the card is just like a 3-mana 3/3 with the whenever you cast a blue spell, tap a thing is good enough. And if you aren't doing anything else on your turn, like spending 5 mana instead and drawing the 2 cards,
you can be the one to Caracas this as well. Like if you play this early and they're like, oh, I gotta Caracas this drop, and you're like, hey, for 5, right? Or just like late game if you want to save it. And
Love it.
Riptide Lab was brought up.
and yeah, this is one your opponents do not want to correct.
No.
Like, you're like,
That's a big
please.
Yeah. All right, next up we have Hypnotic Sprite. 2 mana, 2/1 flying fairy for blue, but also has an adventure mode for 3 mana, 2 and a blue. Counter target spell with converted mana cost 3 or less. I'm torn between Wheeler and Jer here.
Card's good.
This is a Ben card.
Wheeler.
I don't know if I should be sad or happy that Welkin Turn can finally rest. Welkin Turn has done its job. We now have it's just a 2-power flyer for 2 that has a relevant creature
no
type.
downside.
No downside.
No downside.
Okay, it can even block creatures without flying. That's great.
It can counter spells.
Oh yeah, and then there's that gravy on the left side where you're just like, well, if I don't want to play this on 2, I can try and catch something on 3.
So this is just a tempo flying man card?
I just want this in flying, man.
Okay.
I believe the left side, the counter spell, is too situational
Sure.
for me to want in other decks. But in, again, a deck that is playing some real bad cards, you will find yourself in scenarios where, like, well, you'll find yourself in scenarios where where you will play out a couple of threats, and then you're just like, I'm good. We'll just counter whatever you got. And this will fill the role. Because you have to counter most everything that they do.
Next up, we have Into the Story. 7 mana instant for 5 blue. The spell costs 3 less to cast. If an opponent has 7 or more cards in their graveyard, draw 4. Jer?
I really want this to be good because I just want more better draw spells, and 4 mana draw 4 at instant speed is, that's what I need in my life. But I just think it's a little too slow and clunky, especially with all the delving everyone's doing these days. I just think if it was your graveyard, then
Yeah, this card would be nuts.
sign me up. But you just can't reliably interact with your opponent's graveyard that well.
Sure. You're looking to get across from
Effectively.
goblins or something, and you're like, well,
like,
cool.
And you're like, yeah, might as well.
Well, they have
Throw this
shock,
card in the
lightning
trash.
bolt in their bin, and now I'm dead.
So, yeah, I really wanted this card to be good, but I just think it's a little too slow and clunky. But if in your meta that literally nobody's playing aggressive decks and it's all blue mirrors all the time, get it in.
Woo! All right, next up we have the Magic Mirror. 9 mana, legendary artifact, 6 blue. The spell costs 1 less to cast for each instant or sorcery in your graveyard. Has the following abilities. You have no maximum hand size. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a knowledge counter on the mirror, then draw a card for each knowledge counter on said mirror. Do you like this card better, Jer?
Not really. This is pretty close to Ideas Unbound, which is a 6 mana enchantment that...
Mind Unbound?
Mind Unbound, sorry. Ideas Unbound is the sorcery. Yeah, I don't know. I might test this in Seinfeld, but I don't really think Seinfeld's that real of a deck.
So even at blue, you're just like, eh?
It's just like, if you draw it in the first 10 turns of the game, you're probably just not casting it. So...
Yeah, it's weird to want a card like that in Highlander, right? Just like, all right.
And then it's like, once
I don't want this.
Once you've drawn it, it's not winning you the game. It's like, all right, now I get to slowly draw more and more cards. And it's like, yeah, that's good, but it's really slow.
This would feel so bad to get shattered. Like, there are just some artifacts where you don't care. But
It's
this,
like,
This one, you're like, no.
yeah, oh my
Well,
hard work.
at least they get 7 years bad luck.
yeah.
glad somebody made that joke.
Next up, we have Mirror Maid, the person whose services said 9-mana legendary mirror. 3-mana enchantment for 1 blue. You may have it enter the battlefield as a copy of any artifact or enchantment on the battlefield. I was surprised nobody else grabbed this. I like this a lot.
Well, I was originally tagged for this, and I don't need any more copy artifacts. We're fine. We got 3.
Okay.
We maybe even have 4 now, and I've just forgotten the worst one. Do you need more copy enchantments?
I think so.
Great. Talk it.
Yeah,
let's hear it.
I think this is an Enchantress card. As you're not incorrect in talking about copy artifact is probably overdone, especially because a lot of copy artifact is only a single mana pip. It's like 2 and a blue as opposed to 1 blue, which makes
1 and a blue, copy artifact.
Yeah, copy
Or 1
artifacts.
in a blue. Yeah,
copy
right.
artifacts, 1 in a blue, and then Sculpting Steel and Phyrexian Metamorph are, I mean,
3.
they're
are
both just
yeah. So this is actually harder to cast in those instances, so don't really worry about it. But I think this is fine in Enchantress. This would be the 3rd copy enchantment, because there's copy enchantment, and then there's Estrid's Invocation, I believe, is the other one. And so this is fine. There's a lot of effects that you'd love to have more copies of in Enchantress. There's not a ton of really good enchantments early on, and being able to get a second copy of it out when you need to is good. So if you're on the Enchantress deck, they're like the 4 of you.
You're not worried about the double blue early in that deck? That's the only thing that made me think of it more as an artifact card than an enchantment card.
So the issue in Enchantress is you don't really have anything you'd want to copy early. All of your early drops in Enchantress are single green, and I don't know if I want to pay 1 blue to copy,
Mirror's Guile.
Wild Growth or Miri's Guile or something like that. But
why would you even have the option to copy Miri's Guile? I don't get it.
what if you want to look at the top 3 and put them back twice?
On fetch?
Yeah. It's tough. I think this is more copying some of your lock pieces. I'm pretty happy to copy a Propaganda early. 1 Propaganda often isn't enough to keep you safe against the aggressive deck. And that's the issue with Enchantress is you spend, if you don't have the hand where you get an early Enchantress and you're ramping and you're drawing, and instead you're trying to play a defensive hand where you're trying not to die, giving yourself an extra copy of Propaganda to slow down the aggressive deck, or another one of those pieces, I think is where this will see play. All right. Next up, we have the Shimmer Dragon that has a star next to it. I'm not quite sure why.
It's
Because
brawl
it's a
deck.
brawl deck.
Oh, okay. 6 mana, 5/6 dragon for 4 blue, has flying, and as long as you control 4 or more artifacts, it has hexproof. Tap 2 artifacts you control, draw a card. Wheeler.
We've come a long way from Mahmadi Jinn. Now we have a big dumb dragon that if you have 4 more artifacts, and I'm going to try to sell this as a card for the big blue decks or the big Dimir artifacty ramp decks. This has hexproof, so it's probably not dying unless they wrath it. Certainly not dying to a pyroclasm. And then you can just later on check in your artifacts, draw some cards while you're killing them. That seems pretty alright to me.
Where are you playing this?
Big blue. And I'm not talking about the Smash Brothers stage. Everybody hated that one.
I'm also brewing up a Grixis, I call it mid-range, but because it's an artifact-based deck, it's bigger, and it's just looking to play all the medium artifacts cards. So you're trying to accelerate your first 2 turns and then just start playing planeswalkers and big boom booms for the rest of the game. And this slots right into that deck.
What 6 drops are you cutting to play these?
Oh, you're not. You play them all. Those decks, they run into. So it's funny. I talked about this briefly with Emery and whatnot, where those decks traditionally have run into the issue of you have your ramp, you have your big dumbs. Sometimes you draw a hand with all of one of them and not the other, etc. But the decks have gotten more cards that kind of bridge that gap, that fill the middle. So if you're oh, I don't have a huge creature, but I guess I'll play this Urza, or oh wow, I can only play my Karn.
Yeah, now you don't have to play Mere Battlesphere and Blightsteel Colossus and Inkwell Leviathan. You can just kill them with 6 drops instead.
You can shelf your Staff of Nin.
Yeah.
I mean, you probably won't because card's sick.
Do you
but,
remember?
like,
I remember the good old days of, what's the best thing you could possibly tinker for right now? You're like, I don't know, Staff of Nin. You're like, ooh, can't beat that.
yeah.
What a depressing
when
world
Staff
in
of
which we
Nin
live.
came out, and it's like, goodbye, Urza's blueprints. Here we go.
All right, next up, Stolen by the Fae. For X blue, you get a sorcery that returns target creature with converted mana cost X to its owner's hand, and you get X 1/1 fairy creature tokens with flying. Alex, what do you think about this card?
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. This seems tempo-y to me.
I think it's mid-rangey.
Yeah? I mean, just because you remove one of their threats and gain one of your own.
Yeah,
It's a very cool effect, by
It's
the
a
way.
very cool effect. The only issue in tempo is the mana cost.
And it's a sorcery.
Yeah, you don't want to pay 5 mana on a sorcery for that type of swing. But I can see where the brain is going there in terms of it is a tremendous reversal on the board, which is pretty cool.
How much X do you want to pay for this to have it be the best?
See, that's really tough because
It is very tough.
this
because, like,
in this case you're restricted by your opponent's board and creatures. If it was return target permanent,
yeah. I could see you casting this for 2 to get their Tarmogoyf back, and then you have 2 flyers.
This just feels way too expensive to me.
You think so?
Yeah, you're going to get, like, spell pierced, and it'll feel real bad.
if it was an instant or a single blue,
Oh, if it was an instant.
Holy moly.
See, that's different. Then you have, like, a combat trick that we're all, like, that's like core chant,
Yeah,
baby.
you know what?
We're
I
just,
think-
like, removing
Core
one.
chant.
We're just removing one of their
Holy
things
cow.
and then killing another
Yeah.
thing.
We're
It's-
also kind of overlooking how reliant on your opponent having an threat.
yeah.
that is
It is?
targetable.
If your opponent has like a mana dork on 1, and then they play, I don't know, anything. Doesn't have to be Courser of Krufix. They play a Courser of Krufix on turn 2.
Got
That
it.
sounds like a reasonable play pattern. Nothing that busted. You untap. You play your second land. The next time you'll be able to remove that Courser is by like turn 5, right?
Eesh.
That's a huge mana investment, and you get 3 birds out of it, fairies, but birds. It just doesn't. There are just better things I think.
I mean,
you could
also
do
they're
with your
going to
mana.
untap and cast Thrun, so...
Yeah, tapping out for this is also huge. I just think there are better options.
Okay.
And finally, the last blue card we're going to talk about today is the Vantress Gargoyle. 2 mana 5/4 for 1 and a blue. It's an artifact gargoyle. It has flying and a bunch of other text. First line of text. Vantress Gargoyle can't attack unless defending player has 7 or more cards in their graveyard. Next line of text. Vantress Gargoyle can't block unless you have 4 or more cards in your hand. And then finally, tap ability. Each player puts the top card of their library into their graveyard. Alex.
This runs into the same problem that Into the Storybook does, where it's like, even though it gives you the ability to sort of control your opponent's graveyard a little more, it's doing it 1 card at a time and doing almost nothing the rest of the time. I mean, I guess you can block with it. What deck wants this, though?
It's also just like putting like most decks can take advantage of their graveyard.
Yeah, you're giving your opponent resources
it's not
here.
a huge advantage milling your opponent by 1, but like
You're also milling
it's
yourself,
enough.
though.
Yeah, you're milling yourself for sure, which is fine. But it's just like providing they just like there's so many things that need to go right for this card to just be like Tarmogoyf.
Yeah, it's
Right.
just a really
Flying
Flying.
Tarmogoyf.
Yeah, but that's the first
upside
one I
is
saw
like-
too. Is like, how many
The
times are they going
upside
to try and
is
fix
so
Goyf?
high.
Sorry. Wait, you like this card?
Yeah, I don't know. I put it in because I thought it was interesting. I haven't
It
thought
is
like
interesting.
too much about it, but I just saw like 2 mana 5/4 fire, and I'm like, that's
where
a
they get ya.
real fast clock.
To me, this just feels like a weird. Okay, maybe Lupine Prototype is a better example.
Ooh,
The 2 mana 5/5 where it can't attack or block unless you have unless a player
has 1 or fewer cards.
People
in
have
hand.
Yeah.
been trying to put
Has-
that in
unless
decks
a player
for
has no
ages.
cards.
no cards in hand.
So
All right.
like this one to hit this level, you can at least control like. Admittedly, it's not like divided, so like it can't attack if this happens, can't block if this happens.
Why haven't I tried
but,
this
like,
in Workshop Weenie?
Yeah, you know
it's
what?
not
This
very
card's not
good.
that great, but it's better than Hovermere Surge.
Look at the art.
Oh, get out.
All right. Turn 1, Hedron Crab. Turn 2, fetch land, Fortress Gargoyle, and then they're dead in 4 turns.
No, they're bored to death in 4 turns. Oh. Okay.
Let's move on. Let's move on to
Next.
black. All right, first card we're going to talk about today is another card that I thought y'all missed, and I'm disappointed. We have Ayaya. I kid. Ayara, the Forest of Lochwain. 3 mana, 2/3 for black, black, black. Legendary Elf Noble. Whenever it or another black creature enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent loses a life and you gain a life. And then tap and sacrifice another black creature to draw a card. Alex, what do you think about this card?
I like it. This almost makes me want to build like just straight black aggro. Or maybe just like dial back the green splash so that it like still hits this a lot. This card just is kind of sweet.
Ooh, All right, Jer.
I just don't see where you put it in. In aggro, it's a 2/3 body with no keywords and no real relevant ETB. Sure, it drains for 1 when it ETBs, but that's...
I just think those little chisels are going to add up.
It's cool with Bitter Blossom.
I thought even with the recursion that Alex shows in you know zombie dies, bring back zombie dies, bring back zombie over and over. You're like, I've got a what's the 1 mana 2/1 that if you have another zombie in play,
Gravecrawler.
like Gravecrawler, right? You're like attack with Gravecrawler, sack Gravecrawler, draw a card, recast Gravecrawler.
Is this
There are definitely
good in aristocrat? Maybe a very heavy black version.
This card is again just one of those ones where you can definitely sculpt scenarios where like you could take advantage of all these aspects of the card, but like it's not. At least I played with this a decent amount, not in Highlander obviously, but like it performed better than I thought, and then I was just like, oh, there's no way this card is going to ever make it in a format with Lightning Bolt and Caracas and like Lightning Strikes or big creatures. It's just like Gravecrawlering repeatedly with this card is cool, but Gravecrawler repeatedly by itself is good
It's
enough.
also cool. Yeah.
And like you look at the other 3s that black decks have received, it's just like, who would you pick? Ayara, Rotting Regisaur, or Spawn of Mayhem? Cast your votes now.
All right. Next up, we have.
Sorry, I just want to touch briefly. A couple people pinged me about this one because it's a win condition for Eldraine.
Yeah.
Troops black.
And yeah, especially with Corpse Knight now giving an alternate win condition that is more easily castable and tutorable because both recruiters can get Corpse Knight since it's not actually a 2/3.
Right.
Just having a card that you can actually cast during the course of a game, like triple black, isn't realistic for Eldraine to hit, and this card isn't really doing anything special for the deck that Corpse Knight and the bird loop isn't.
I only just realized that
already.
Fixing that misprint made the card better in your deck. Exactly.
Yep. That's why people were joking, are you playing the 2/3 version? I'm like, no. Would actually rather it be a 2/2. Like if it was supposed to be a 2/3 and 2/2 was the misprint, I might play the 2/2 version to try to... no, I wouldn't actually.
What else we got?
Blacklance Paragon is a 3/1 for 1 and a black. Human Knight has flash, and when it enters the battlefield, target knight gains death touch and lifelink until end of turn. Notably, it doesn't say another target knight, so it can target itself. Alex, what do you think?
So people introduced this to me as like a removal spell that's sometimes a knight. I don't know how to assess this. It looks powerful.
Are we only playing this as Ambush Viper? I think that can't be right.
I think this card's really good. It's got 3 power for 2 mana at flash, which can stretch your opponent's counter spells, and it's a life gain removal spell.
Only
Worst
Ambush
case.
Viper?
Yeah.
Well, it's better than Ambush Viper.
Yes.
In some ways.
No, well, it's just like this
every
is a
way.
huge swing.
Oh,
for,
yeah,
like-
yeah.
And you're not just playing this and being like, okay, we trade. You're playing this and then being
Kill
like,
your
all
guy,
right,
gain
I'll
3.
kill no matter what it is you're attacking into me with, and I'll gain 3 life, which is pretty good.
No, here's
Yeah,
the
I
thing.
mean, like Death Touch is kind of more hella than people give it credit for. I think.
You animate your Mutavault, block, tap, flash this in. Mutavault is a knight.
Hell yeah.
Boom. Now you got a 3/1 and their best creature's dead.
It also provides cheap lifelink, albeit for 1 turn,
Yeah,
on
it's a life
black
swing, yeah.
creature
Yeah.
that blue decks, it's not black. So like I looked at this card and I was like, you know what? I bet there's going to be some kind of like blue-black deck that'll just play this, because in certain matchups you just need to flash a Snapcaster on 2 to kill your opponent. Yeah. And this has 3 power.
Well, and especially in blue-black, you're like, lifelink?
Yeah. I'll take anything.
Yeah, I was
Collector Brutality? Whoa.
Soren's Moment of Craving? Yeah. Soren's Thirst?
Yeah, it's weird because
what
like,
do I gotta do?
The evolution of my own deck has gone from its roots in like sort of like City Black, where you're paying a lot of life for effect, to kind of the opposite, where it's just like, how many life gain cards can we cram into here as a hedge against like mono red? So get him in. He looks really cool too.
Next up, we have Cauldron of Eternity. This is a 12 mana legendary artifact for 10 black, but it costs 2 less for each creature card in your graveyard. Whenever a creature you control dies, put it on the bottom of your library, or bottom of its owner's library. Whenever a creature you control dies, put it on the bottom of its owner's library.
It's just put there
it's because if you control.
Yeah. And then finally, for 3 mana, tap and pay 2 life. Return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Do this only as a sorcery. Jer, there's a lot of hoops to jump through. What do you think of this card?
I think this card is potentially really powerful in 2 different archetypes. Either like recurring nightmare survival, like black-green, more toolboxy type deck. And I actually think it's somewhat reasonable in just traditional reanimator decks that are going a little more threat heavy. Both of those decks are very good at filling their bin very quickly and filling their bin outside of creature combat, so they'll be able to continually put reanimation targets in the bin, even though this is putting creatures you control that are dying on the bottom.
You know what deck I want to play this in is the red-black artifact-based reanimator deck, because its sort of thing is repeatable effect, so it plays like Goblin Welder, and this is also an artifact, which is relevant.
You cheated out with Welder.
Wait, hold on. Goblin Welder, and I'm fairly certain Goblin Engineer, also, the creature's never dying, right? On the exchange. So if you have
how does Goblin Welder work?
Play,
does it switch, or does it die?
You're sacrificing them.
Oh, do you have to sacrifice it?
Yeah.
All right. We have to bring
Goblin
up an
Welder,
errata version.
you sacrifice it. I think so.
I thought wasn't it a weird wording, like select a creature, select an artifact in play and an artifact in the graveyard.
If these are both still legal targets or whatever. Okay, you do sacrifice it.
But
so hold on. Choose target artifact the player controls and a target artifact that player's at graveyard. If both targets are still legal as it resolves, that player simultaneously sacrifices the artifact and returns the artifact card to the battlefield. That is the wording.
That's just good card design.
So it does die.
Still, this deck has the ability to effectively fill its graveyard, effectively put specific cards into the graveyard, and return artifacts that cost way too much mana from the graveyard to play. So, I don't know.
Yeah,
I'd just be worried in that deck about how many creatures you could get in the bin to
make it cheap.
That's reasonable.
We do have to move on, unfortunately. Next up, we have Murderous Rider. This card's really exciting. I think this is one of the cooler cards in the set.
Oh, yeah!
3 mana, 2/3 zombie knight for 1 black. Has lifelink, and when it dies, put it on the bottom of its owner's library. But it can also go on an adventure. Swift End is a 3 mana instant for 1 black. Destroy target creature or planeswalker, but lose 2 life. Jer.
This card is really, really good. I've been extolling Hero's Downfall's praises for several years now, and this card is much better. It does the same thing, still an instant, still the same great cost. You do lose 2 life, but then you get a 2/3 with lifelink afterwards, which is really good.
Alex, anything to weigh in on this?
I love it! It goes right in zombies as well, but it would go into just about any black-based aggressive deck, and probably black mid-range, maybe even black control.
I think it's better in mid-range than aggro, honestly.
Yeah, I think I agree, just because it's like a 3-drop, but...
And it's not super aggressive, like it is a 2-power 3-drop, so it's not like you slam this down on 3 if your opponent hasn't presented anything to kill, and
it
your
is
opponent's
another
like,
creature with lifelink.
It's no rotting Regisaur. Let's put it that way.
All right, next up we have Oathsworn Knight, 3 mana, 0/0 human knight for 1 black, but it does enter the battlefield with 4 +1/+1 counters on it. It must attack each combat if able, and if it would be dealt damage while it has a +1/+1 counter on it, Now that's notable because there have been some cards that don't have that clause. Prevent that damage and remove a +1/+1 counter from it. Alex, what do you think about a 3-mana 4/4?
That is made out of counters?
Yes.
Get this in the Golgari counters version of Black Mold. I think
I'm not dead yet.
I'm not dead yet. Like, this is obviously great in the, what's the name of that snake?
Winding Constrictor.
Oh,
In the
Winding
Winding
Constrictor?
Constrictor version. That, like, that card, like, Winding Constrictor is real in the black-green Winding Constrictor deck. It's, like, the only kind of specifically cares about counters card because I don't play
Hardened Scales.
Hardened Scales, that's one. But yeah, like, this is a 4/4 for 3 that is difficult to put away. Oh no, it has to attack all the time.
I mean, attack each combat if able is probably the worst text.
Yeah.
Some of the worst text in the game, like on a card. But the upsides of this outweigh that.
It really does, because like normally you're worried about creatures that usually are forced to attack all the time often have like a vulnerability that makes, it quite a big occupational hazard. This one sort of hedges against that because it's going to get into combat. Even if it would trade, it won't.
Next up, we have Order of Midnight. 2-mana 2/2 human knight for 1 and a black. Has flying but can't block. And it may go on an adventure, Alter Fate, 1 and a black. Return target creature card. Return target creature card from a graveyard, your graveyard, to your hand. Jer.
I've been playing a bunch of these regrow effects like Vertices, Maneuver, Find Finality, and I've been really impressed with them, especially when they're stapled to other reasonable things.
What's Find Finality?
It's black-green hybrid, return up to 2 target creatures from your graveyard to your hand, and for black-green, all creatures get -4/-4. You may put 2 +1/+1 counters on a creature you control.
Question for you on the art. Is that a very big bird or a very small person?
Large bird.
Okay, all right.
Very big.
Good, just making sure we're on the same page here.
Yeah.
Next up, we have Rankle, Master of Prankle. 4-mana 3/3 legendary fairy rogue for 2 black, has flying and haste. And whenever it deals combat damage to a player, choose any number. Now, this is a card you have to read carefully. Each player discards a card. Each player loses 1 life and draws a card. Each player sacrifices a card, and you can choose any number of these. Each player sacrifices a creature, pardon me. Alex.
It's just a prank, bro. This card seems sweet. It's like you crack in, and then you get your choice of 1, 2, or 3 of the effects of smallpox.
One slightly different.
One slightly different, but it's just like you get options. Your floor with this is it's a 3/3 with flying and haste.
And any number can be 0.
Yeah. So
and you can choose all of them.
Yeah, like it has tons of flexibility. I'm looking forward to trying this out in the 4-drop slot and seeing what kind of weird, messed up stuff I can do.
Wheeler's doing something with his hands.
2 mana.
You know when this card's great? Turn 2 or 3.
Turn 1. Lotus. Let's go.
Beep, beep.
All right, next up we have Specters Shriek. This card's very interesting to me. 1 black mana gets you a sorcery. Target opponent reveals their hand. You may choose a non-land card from it. If you do, that player exiles that card. If a non-black card is exiled this way, you must also exile a card from your hand. So as a black deck, no restriction, take any card from their hand, but if it's non-black, you also have to take a card from your hand. Jer is saying no. Alex is saying maybe. Wheeler is giving the thumbs up. Let's start with Wheeler.
I think this card's pretty good. It's not going to be for every deck, that's for sure, because not every deck wants an unmask. But exile is a very relevant line of text on this card. So picking whatever key... There are so many decks that rely on very key pieces and recurring those key pieces and making sure they never come back, A-okay by me. Well, not by me, because I'm typically playing those decks and that would suck.
All right. Jer, real quick.
I just think the fact that you're down cards most of the time in this card
This is 2 for 1.
Yeah, not 1 for 2. Means
Sorry, right, yeah.
it's just not going to be included in most of the decks I play, at least.
It's an unmask.
All right. Next up, we have Sir Conrad the Grim. 5 mana, 5/4, legendary human knight for 3 black. Whenever another creature dies or a creature card is put into a graveyard from anywhere other than the battlefield, or a creature card leaves your graveyard, Sir Conrad the Grim deals 1 damage to each opponent, and there's an activated ability, 1 and a black. Each player puts the top card of their library into their graveyard. I added this card. It's very expensive, but that's a lot of words. That's so many words. Can anybody think of anything to do with all those words? Like, that's a very powerful effect, but on a very expensive body.
It's a worse card than Tasker for World Gorger Dragon.
All right, that's the thing. It's just too expensive.
Way too expensive.
Yeah. Okay. That's what I thought, but I thought it'd be worth visiting.
Caracas.
Oh, it's a legend.
Carcassonne.
All right, that's fair. Then we have Wishclaw Talisman. 2 mana artifact for 1 and a black. Enters the battlefield with 3 wish counters on it. For 1 and tap and remove a wish counter, you may search your library for a card, put it into your hand, and shuffle your library. But then an opponent gains control of this. Activate it only during your turn. Wheeler.
This card is very, very good for several reasons. You can just play it in the Storm decks where you play it out, you just wait, then you pick the turn you want to kill them and you kill them. They get the Talisman, who cares? They
get it tapped.
That's fine. Yeah, they get it tapped, so they can't use it.
And you can only activate it on your turn, so
correct.
You give it to them on your turn. Even if they could untap it and still had the mana to use it, the card doesn't let them.
And untapping it with your own Manifold key or Voltaic key, you activate it, untap it, activate it. That's also not bad. Pretty good with Krark Clan Ironworks as well. You activate it, you sacrifice it, you find a Scrap Trawler, you play the Scrap Trawler, play something to sacrifice to get the Wishclaw Talisman. There's a bunch of loops with this card.
Powerful with Dak Faden.
Yeah.
Activate it, go search for a card, take it back.
Activate it, find your Dak Faden, activate it, find your Teferi. There's just like, this card's very good. And it's just a cheap artifact. Huh. It's a cheap artifact.
Yeah, this card's really good.
What about your...
I was shocked it didn't put it on top. I was like, I had to read the word hand like 6 times before I believed it. I was like,
so
I thought they weren't doing this anymore.
What about the worst case scenario? You cast this, you demonic tutor, you give it to them, they demonic tutor, you get to demonic tutor 1 more time.
That's not the worst case. The worst case is they then get to use it, do it twice somehow.
Yeah.
But that's still not even the worst, and they needed to jump through some hoops.
Worst case scenario, you cast it out there, you're trying to wait, they play Dak Faden and take it from you.
Well, no, the worst case scenario, you play this out and the building burns down. So
this card's very cool.
Very good.
But it is the Cursed Monkey's hand, so there are ways will burn you.
Scraw.
Yeah. And the final black card we're going to talk about today in our set review is Witch's Vengeance. 3 mana sorcery for 1 black. Creatures of the creature type of your choice get -3/-3 until end of turn. Now, it's important to note that this doesn't target Kill's true name. But does it do enough? It's not a Wrath. It can be situationally, but sometimes it might only be a 3 mana sorcery 1/1. What do you think, friends?
This is going to be a 6 sideboard card.
Okay,
Yes.
well,
Like,
let's 3 mana sorcery to kill a thing. Like, sometimes you'll Ruinous Path a creature, or you'll Vindicate a creature, whatever you want to call it. The fact that you can get selective and still have combat with this involved, like if you choose an overlapping creature type on your opponent's creatures, or just one of whatever creature they have, then you get to crunch in, hopefully it not affecting your side of the board. There's just a lot of flexibility in what you get to pick. Whether or not this is good enough in a world of Plague Engineer, Dead of Winter,
oh my god,
and Toxic Deluge being, the 3 bigger ones. I can see maybe a build not wanting Dead of Winter and wanting to have access to this, but it's not bad. And of course, if you're against like Hoof or something, and you're like, oh, Elf or Goblin, and that's a pretty big ranch.
All right, friends. Well, that is going to be it for our set review today. Please remember that if there's any cards you think we missed, let us know down in the comments, and we'll try and address them in the next one. And this might be a three-parter. We'll see. We'll see how the next episode gets there. But let's now move to our closing segment, Powerful Magic. Thank you, Jer. And up to date, we have me. And I want to tell a story from Magic Fest Vegas. I was playing against a young listener, young fan of the show, which is very exciting. I was on my Bug Lands deck, and they were on a red-blue Academy deck. And this is very interesting. I managed to run out an early Merit Lodge. And normally, the game would be over. Because I have a flying 2020 indestructible horror? Avatar. But because they're a listener of the show, they listened to a certain Wheeler and were playing a 1-mana artifact that let them create a Thopter every turn. Help me out, what's the name of that card again?
Retrofitter Foundry, baby.
Retrofitter Foundry. Now, they didn't have enough mana to really start taking over the game with this, but they definitely had the ability to create a 1/1 with flying every turn. So they could make a 1/1 servo, then untap it, then tap to sacrifice the servo and turn it into a flyer. And that was stalling the game. And I was like, well, this is scary because they're an Academy deck. So if they can start to generate enough advantage to get through there, it's fine. So there's a clock on my side, and I have to rumble with this 20/20 every turn just to keep them off that. Oh, obviously, oh no.
Life's hard.
So I'm like, what's my plan B? And I cast an Ashiok, a 3-mana Ashiok, the old one. What's the...
Dream Render.
Dream Render. Yeah. So Ashiok has the ability +2.
Oh, wait, no.
No, not this one.
Nightmare
Weaver.
Yeah.
So +2, exile the top 3 cards of target opponent's library. -X, put a creature card with converted mana cost X exiled under it onto the battlefield. So the first +2, what do I hit? But Blightsteel Colossus. And now we've got ourselves a very, very weird game where I'm just plussing Ashiok every turn and attacking with this 20/20 while trying to attrition away any other resources from this Academy deck until we eventually reach the point where I managed to minus Ashiok for 11. Putting a Blightsteel Colossus into play, and I got to live this very weird...
Wait a minute, Blightsteel costs 12.
Was it 12? Whatever Blightsteel costs. And I got to live this very weird life where I got to attack simultaneously with a Blightsteel Colossus and a Merit Lodge. Anyways, I won that game.
Oh boy.
Weird.
I think he's dead.
Yeah, that was fun. Thank you for the game, friend. All right, friends, thank you so much for watching today. I hope you enjoyed part 1 of X, presumably 3X could be anything, of our set review. I want to remind you that North 100 is brought to you by you with your support over at the Patreon at patreon.com/LoneyReadyRun. Thank you so much for watching. Let us know what you want to see if we missed any cards, and we'll see you next time. Bye.